Somehow, it has been 16 years since the last Friday the 13th movie, that being Marcus Nispel's solid 2009 do-over. There have been false starts, there was that pesky legal battle, and ultimately, here we are, with no particular movement on a new Friday the 13th movie. Although we at least have Victor Miller working with A24 for a Crystal Lake TV series. So there's that. Either way, the point being, it's been a minute. And when looking back across the franchise, few horror properties are as synonymous with the classic Final Girl concept as Friday the 13th is. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and today we're ranking all the Friday the 13th Final Girls from worst to best. Number 12, Jessica Kimball, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. For most Friday the 13th fans, me included, hearing the words Jason Goes to Hell, yep, that is enough to make you break out in a cold sweat. Notoriously the Friday the 13th movie that featured minimal Jason Voorhees, at least in the physical sense, Jason Goes to Hell instead has the spirit of Jason passed from person to person. Although there is a very inventive, impressive opening act, but that is where the Final Friday peaks. That opening, Jason is lulled out into an FBI sting designed to blow him to pieces, and that is exactly what happens. And from there, the film goes off a cliff as we focus on a bounty hunter trying to stop that spirit of Voorhees from being passed to Jason's half-sister, his niece Jessica, or Jessica's daughter. It's Carrie Keegan's Jessica here who ends up positioned as the final girl, with the revelation that only someone related to Jason can ever truly kill him. A magical knife to the heart ends up doing the job for Jessica, but she rarely feels like a final girl. In the same way that Jason Goes to Hell, that rarely feels like a proper Friday the 13th film. Number 11, Whitney Miller, Friday the 13th, 2009. The main issue with the Friday the 13th remake's Whitney Miller as a final girl is the simple fact that she's out of action for a large chunk of Marcus Nispel's redo. While she very much is in the final girl role by the time the film closes, the main role for Amanda Righetti's Whitney is to drive the narrative of the picture by her absence. Her friends may have been butchered by Jason Voorhees during the opening of this 2009 film, yet Jason decided to capture Whitney and keep her alive due to her resemblance to his dead mother. From there, we have a time jump to 6 weeks later, where Whitney's brother Clay is in Crystal Lake searching for his missing sister. Clay meets a group of largely disposable and largely annoying college kids, and that sets the table nicely for what this Friday the 13th remake is all about. It's only as this do-over hits its final beats that Whitney is finally found by Clay, and the two eventually take down Jason after Whitney pretends to be the deceased Pamela Voorhees, and eventually stabs Jason in the chest with a machete, and then the siblings dump his body in the franchise's famed lake. Number 10, Rowan LaFontaine, Jason X. Jason X is certainly a unique beast in the pantheon of the Friday the 13th films, with its futuristic sci-fi setting making it nothing if not distinctive. And for me, Jason X is absolutely a guilty pleasure, a daft popcorn slasher that clearly doesn't take itself too seriously, and a film that also gave us the brilliantly badass Uber Jason design. One other thing that marks Jason X out as a rare horror film is how it actually features an iconic villain locked up by the government. As the movie opens, we're introduced to a landscape where Jason Voorhees has been captured and being held at the Crystal Lake Research Facility. When all attempts to kill Jason have failed, scientist Rowan LaFontaine makes the decision to cryogenically freeze Crystal Lake's most infamous son. Of course, things take a turn for the worse when Jason kills a bunch of soldiers, that was kind of expected, and he kills David Cronenberg, not so cool, but Jason and Rowan wind up frozen in time as the film jumps ahead 445 years to a spaceship that defrosts the pair. When looking at the final girls of the Friday the 13th franchise, Rowan has to rank fairly low on this list, simply because she spent years trying to kill Jason but constantly failed. Even when she finally gets that job done, it's thanks to advanced future tech, a bunch of other scientists, and of course, the cheeky KM-14 android. Number 9, Pam Roberts, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. In Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, Melanie Kinnaman's Pamela Roberts has the distinction of being one of the few protagonists of the Friday the 13th franchise who did not battle Jason Voorhees. That fifth Friday movie famously had a Jason-shaped hole, with copycat killer Roy Burns revealed to be the man under the hockey mask this time out. As such, it makes it a little less impressive to survive a Friday the 13th movie, when the movie features a mere mortal man rather than the ominous presence of Jason Voorhees. Not just does Pam have to deal with Roy's fake Jason rampage, she also has to deal with a Tommy Jarvis who is gradually losing his mind after the antics of the final chapter. Added to that, this is a Friday the 13th picture that featured a ridiculous amount of kills, even when compared to the usual high body counts of these films. Alongside Tommy Tommy and Reggie the Reckless, Pam helped take down Roy with him thrown from a barn window and onto a bunch of spikes. And while Pam did survive Roy Burns, the ending of A New Beginning leaves her fate ambiguous after Tommy is suggested as having gone full-on crazy. Number 8. Renee Wickham, Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Sure, it is often mocked by the masses, but I will forever defend Jason Takes Manhattan. That said, I can fully appreciate why some might dump on this movie, and I can also fully appreciate that its final girl is a so-so character at best. Played by Jensen Deggett, Renee is a character who has the honour of knocking off Jason's hockey mask and exposing his disfigured face, which was a pivotal part of Part 8's finale. The thing is, throughout the rest of the film, we so often find Renee only surviving situations due to the assistance of others. Where Renee does have some further positives though, is in how she manages to overcome her own fear of water during the film, while also just about keeping out of the clutches of her creepy uncle throughout her class's boat trip to New York. By the end of Jason Takes Manhattan, Renee throws some well-placed New York toxic waste into Jason's face, causing him to lose his mask, melt his face, and somehow kind of revert Jason back to a sobbing infant in a Manhattan sewer tunnel. Yeah, it gets a bit weird as Jason Takes Manhattan, but hey, at least it's not Jason Goes to Hell the final Friday, which makes Jason Takes Manhattan look like a masterpiece by comparison. Number 7. Laurie Campbell, Freddy vs. Jason. One could argue that Laurie Campbell maybe deserves a higher spot here because, let's face it, she had to face Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, Laurie being the one to eventually decapitate Freddy at the end of Ronnie Yu's Freddy vs. Jason, and even kind of aligning with Jason during this Battle of the Behemoths. In this case then, Laurie's real war is with Freddy Krueger, with Jason merely a pawn who finds himself up against Laurie after being manipulated by Freddy, and so that's why Laurie doesn't rank any higher. Also, the wink from Freddy's decapitated head in Freddy vs. Jason's final shot, that suggests that maybe, just maybe, Laurie didn't quite get the job done. Number 6. Trish Jarvis, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. While Trish Jarvis served as the de facto final girl of Friday the 13th, the final chapter, she's ultimately overshadowed by her younger brother Tommy. Of course, Tommy would go on to have a 3-film run against Jason, well, 2 against Jason, 1 against Roy Burns, while Trish would have a one-and-done appearance as her younger brother's protector here in the final chapter. Resourceful and able to remain calm in the face of adversity, as in pissed off Jason Voorhees, Trish is on the ball enough to barricade the windows and doors of the Jarvis house. Plus, she later cracks a monitor over Jason's head when he again comes calling in the final act. When all's said and done though, it was Corey Feldman's Tommy Jarvis that put Jason down here, maniacally hacking Jason up with a machete. Number 5. Tina Shepard, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Full disclosure, I think The New Blood is pretty darn awful, likely only second to Jason Goes to Hell when it comes to the absolute worst of the Friday the 13th franchise. Still, one could make an argument that The New Blood's Tina Shepard is the best final girl in the series. I mean, I won't make that argument myself, but some would. After all, Tina is the most powerful Friday the 13th protagonist we've ever seen. Essentially, she's a Carrie White knockoff with telekinetic abilities. In fact, it's almost an unfair fight when Tina finally goes up against Jason, and you can't help but feel that Jason, he's the clear underdog here. For the rest of the final girls listed here, they have to use their smarts, their will to survive, any weapons that may be nearby, or simply hope that Lady Luck is smiling favourably on them. For Tina, her superhero-like powers, they are basically a cheat code. Granted, Tina does have a tragic backstory where she, accidentally killed her father when she was a child, plus she's abused and bullied by her crazy psychiatrist, but nah, Tina can't really rank any higher here due to her having such a major advantage over every single other character in the series. Number 4. Megan Garris, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Wherever the red dot goes, ya bang. Jason Lives found the franchise in a little bit of a strange place. Jason was dead, copycat Roy Burns was dead, and the series was pretty much just poking fun at itself by now. But Jason Lives is obviously far from a straight-laced horror movie, as, perfectly highlighted by the James Bond-esque opening sequence. There's fourth wall breaking, there's extremely cheesy death scenes, and we have a final girl here who, quite frankly, is a lot more fun than many of her predecessors. That final girl would be Megan Garris, the daughter of the local sheriff, and someone who's positioned as the would-be love interest of one Tommy Jarvis. Sure, Megan may take a backseat to Tommy at times, but she's a ballsy, mischievous, independent character who eventually helps take down Jason with a boat propeller. Number 3. Alice Hardy, Friday the 13th, 1980. The OG many of the franchise's survivors, Adrienne King's Alice Hardy has a very special place in horror history. The Alice character cemented her place as a beloved horror hero by making it out of the first Friday the 13th picture in one piece. It wasn't Jason Voorhees who Alice found herself up against, of course, for this first film was all about Pamela Voorhees on a twisted, roaring rampage of revenge following the death of her son. The reveal of Pamela as the killer was held off until the final act, and that final act wrapped up with her being decapitated by Alice. Unfortunately for Alice though, that win, it was only a temporary one, with her brutally murdered during the opening moments of Friday the 13th Part 2 as Jason Voorhees stuck an ice pick through a dome. Number 2, Chris Higgins, Friday the 13th Part 3. To some, Friday the 13th Part 3 is the very best Friday the 13th movie, with this the movie where Jason first dons the hockey mask. It's also a movie that gave us one of the franchise's greatest protagonists, that being Dana Kimmel's Chris Higgins. What makes Chris particularly noteworthy is that she actually managed to escape Jason twice, once in the present day setting and once 2 years earlier. Initially established as one of Part 3's more meek and mild characters, that makes it all the more impressive to see Chris evolve as the film plays out, eventually taking a fight directly to Jason, beating him with a shovel, hanging him, and then wedging an axe in his head. On a slightly less fortunate note though, the closing seconds of Part 3 suggest she's had a complete mental breakdown, last seen in a frenzied state as the police drive her to safety. Number 1, Ginny Field, Friday the 13th Part 2. Yep, at the top of this list, it absolutely had to be Amy Steele's Ginny Field of Friday the 13th Part 2 fame. Of all of those to battle Jason over the years, the only person to come close to Ginny in the badass stakes is franchise fave Tommy Jarvis. Of course, Ginny is the first final girl to actually run up against Jason, the original Friday the 13th having Pamela Voorhees as its killer, and Ginny uses her smarts to play on the events of what audiences had seen in Sean S. Cunningham's 1980 original movie. With Jason having caused carnage at Camp Crystal Lake, Ginny finds herself stumbling across his dingy cabin. Piecing together that Jason is the believed dead son of Pamela Voorhees, Ginny puts on Pam's old sweater, stopping Jason dead in his tracks. Initially convincing Jason that he's face to face with his mother, Ginny sticks a machete through the fella's shoulder just as he's about to kill her boyfriend Paul. From there, we get a fake out dream ending of Jason attacking Ginny through a window, before reality kicks in and we see our survivor safely in an ambulance. Well, at least Ginny is safe, for the fate of poor Paul is never actually revealed here, though an unused ending for Part 2 revealed that yes, Paul became yet another victim of the ever ominous Jason Voorhees.